Danielle, welcome back to Age Better.
It's so great to be here.
So, you wrote this great article for the New York Times where you have a column, and it was all about a topic that I have been meaning to do an episode about for a really long time because people keep asking me, and I'm actually
hmm
keep asking myself, is this something I should be wearing? It's all about weighted vests, and you went very, very deep. So, before we get into what you found out and what you wrote about in the column, which,
hmm
by the way, everyone, the link to the article will be in the show notes. So, definitely check it out if you haven't seen it already. But what made you decide to focus on weighted vests?
Well, I think like a lot of us, my editor and I had begun to notice that they were basically everywhere, especially on social media. In the last really 6 months to a year, there's been so much hype around weighted vests and then just in the real world as well, on the streets, on hiking trails, they're just kind of proliferating. And this was a piece of gear that until pretty recently was really only used, really only saw it in the context of like high performance, sports training or rucking, but seeing women and midlife and older women wearing them, seeing them become so ubiquitous, we just had to kind of
You had to jump on it.
explore what was going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a hot topic. And also, we do see a lot of social media influencers talking
hmm
about weighted vests. We even see a few medical, doctor media
Yes.
influencers like Dr.
hmm
Vonda Wright, Dr.
hmm
Mary Claire Haver. I see them kind of talking about this a lot. But you just mentioned something, and I want to just clarify for the audience. You mentioned rucking. So
Yes.
first explain what rucking is, and then give them a little idea of what is a weighted vest really, and how is it different from
Yes.
rucking?
Yes. So, and some of the terms, it's not like, there's some gray area, but rucking and the term comes from, it actually has a military origin, wearing a rucksack.
Hmm.
Um, it's it's usually referring to wearing a weighted backpack. So a backpack that's carrying a pretty significant amount of weight and wearing that backpack while either walking or running and also doing resistance exercises.
But again,
And
it's only on your
it
back.
only on your back. So the
Right.
distribution of weight is different. With weighted vests, and I also really the focus of my story was both the way that they're being kind of pitched to postmenopausal women.
Yes.
And so the way that they're being marketed and pitched and the way that women are using them, it's you're starting at like 5 to 10% of your body weight. That's the recommendation. And what I think, what you see on the streets is a much lighter device and it's a vest. So it wraps around to your, the front of your body as well.
So it's the weight is distributed ideally, correct? Equal
Distributed
amount between
differently.
back and front.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are different models, and full disclosure, I haven't, seen and explored all of the different models out there, and they range
Okay.
in cost from like, $29 to $300. But
Yes.
the idea is compared to a rucksack, it's more of a, somewhat even distribution between front and
Yeah,
back.
full disclosure, I got kind of sucked into this whole trend. Not for myself. I haven't gotten
hmm
one for myself just yet, but for one of my daughters for her
hmm
birthday in December.
hmm
And I got her
hmm
one of those $300 ones because it was
They're
so
very
darn
cool.
cute. What can I say? It was white. It was just like
hmm
perfectly fitting.
hmm hmm
And she said she actually even wears it on Zoom calls and she's going
Yeah.
around. So.
hmm
But
hmm
okay, so let's talk about now what your research, what your interviews told you about weighted
hmm
vests, what they can do, what they can't do. So
hmm
let's focus first on bone health because one of the things I'm seeing out there and people are asking me about
hmm
because they know my great interest in bone health
Yes.
is this good for bone health? Will it benefit my bones? Because there's a lot of buzz. Again, you mentioned postmenopausal women and the
hmm
like and old
hmm
midlife older women,
hmm
when bone health is really
Yes.
so critical to focus on.
hmm
So what does the science say? What did you find out?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, despite the hype around weighted vests for bone health, the research is it's just not there yet. It's not to say that we won't, in the future, there won't be a large scale, long term, randomized controlled, trial that reveals something different. So, On social media especially, but also, I've seen in some other places as well. Weighted vests are sort of just pitched as it's just like put one on, go for a walk, go about your daily life. If you can, maybe do some resistance exercises and you're benefiting your bones. And the people who make these recommendations often point to there's the same studies that keep coming up. So I looked into those studies. I spoke with, exercise physiologists, orthopedic surgeons, and the problem is the studies that are cited have often they're all small. Several of them had less than 20 people. So there would be like 9 people who wore a vest, 10 who didn't. And if you think about if we kind of applied that same model to a medication, for example, and you knew that 9 people had worn it, you might not, we can't count that as definitive.
Yeah, good
And
analogy.
yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is that in some of these studies, even though the participants who wore the vest, they sometimes did see modest either improvements or bone health or the rate at which their bone density declined was slower. However, they were combining the vest with activities that we know benefit bone health, like jumping or other weight-bearing exercises. So this is not to say they don't do anything for bone health. It's just that we haven't really clearly been able to parse out
Right.
what's
Was it
best.
that exercise that they were doing, or was it the weighted vest, right?
Exactly. And especially for when it comes to walking, there's been very little research on walking while wearing a weighted vest. And the one small study that often gets, or I should say that we're aware of, it didn't actually show any difference in the groups that wore the vest versus didn't. So
Hmm.
I'll get to what it can do, but when it comes to bone health, as of right now, there really isn't research backing up those claims.
Okay, so that's bone, which is connected to but
Hmm.
different than muscle. Very much
Yes.
connected. So let's talk about
Hmm.
that. So let's just say you decide to go to the gym and wear a weighted vest so that you have more weight on you as you're doing kind of more gymmy things like
Yeah.
lunges and
Yeah.
squats and push-ups and things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
Will
Hmm.
it help having that extra weight on, depending upon how much you put on, of course, to build muscle?
It does appear to help in a kind of modest way. The first thing I would say is this might be a little counterintuitive because you're wearing the vest on your upper body, but it's really not building upper body strength. It's putting more load on your lower body, maybe your lower core as well. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So, don't think of it as a replacement really for any strength training. I'll get to that, but particularly for upper body. It can make resistance exercises more challenging and help you build muscle. But again, there isn't really much evidence suggesting that it makes a tremendous difference. A lot of people like wearing them, and so if we're talking about, everyone any fitness expert will tell you the best exercise is the one that you'll do.
Yes.
So
So
if
if it
it
motivates
inspires
you in
you,
some way, yeah,
great.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but as of right now, we have much more evidence in favor of traditional progressive strength training for building or maintaining muscle mass and strength than simply wearing a weighted vest.
Okay, so let's talk about what they can do.
Yeah.
What did your experts tell you that really,
Yeah.
like, wearing one will benefit us how?
Yes. So it will benefit again, depending on, how heavy it is, how frequently you wear it. But if you're wearing a weighted vest while walking or running or just doing, a workout that you might be doing otherwise, it can improve your cardiovascular health, your endurance, maybe your overall fitness because it is putting more load on the body. And so that forces your heart and lungs to work harder, your muscles to work harder. So it's very possible that if you like wearing it and you're adding it as a kind of additional tool into your fitness routine, you will reap the benefits of just feeling more energetic and finding that doing the workouts without the vest is maybe a little bit easier. We're not talking like, again, just every individual will have their own experience, but it's not going to be a gigantic difference if you're wearing a light vest.
Right.
But yeah, it can help to dial up your
So it
your
sounds
cardio.
like, based on what you just said, it sounds like the benefit is more cardiovascular as
Yes.
opposed to bone or muscle building. But so what are some of the kinds of exercises? Like, let's just say, okay, I decide to get one. I'm going to get one. What should I do with it? Walking, running, or everything that we talked about? Because it's a little bit of a help. That's what it really sounds like to me. It helps a little bit.
It's a little bit of a help. Yeah. I wrote a story about a year ago on wrist and ankle weights, and because they were having a moment actually with a much sort of younger cohort on social media. They were going viral again, and it's a similar concept. Yeah, if you want to wear one while walking, maybe, I mean, running, it's sort of, we're taking it into a different category than the way that they're currently being pitched for postmenopausal women. But
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah, it will dial up your workout a little bit.
a
But
little bit.
as one expert told me, she would rather see people end their walks 10 minutes early and spend 10 minutes doing traditional strength training than think of wearing a weighted vest as a replacement for either a full body strength training regimen or really any kind of more intensive strength
That's a
training.
wonderful way to look at it. And I'm so happy that you just said that. So, really, to summarize what you just said,
Yeah,
it really, everyone, you can wear this, but don't think it's going to replace the hard work that you need to
exactly.
do with some of the strength training, resistance training exercises that we all need to be doing. We all
Right.
know that we need to be doing. You can add it in, but don't think you can replace it. And I love that. So if you think you're going to be replacing the hard work by extending your walk with a vest on, no, then you're kind of kidding yourself. And it also sounds like, given everything you just said, Danielle, that
hmm
maybe we shouldn't be thinking about buying the $300 version.
Now, again, if you're a high performance athlete, if you're wanting to, I again, disclaimer, I did not, my research really wasn't looking at using weighted vests for those purposes, and a lot of athletes use them and love them. But for women who are postmenopausal and again who are thinking of it as a way to protect bone health, as maybe a replacement for strength training, there are better options. Another way of thinking of it is it's a supplement, it's not a substitute. So yes, if you want to give yourself an extra challenge and wear it while doing lunges and squats and traditional resistance exercise is great, but you can't just like put it on and expect that it's
And
going to do
expect
that
some
work for you.
miracle, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. It's funny you mentioned about the high performing because the daughter I bought the vest for, she is a very fast runner and she's a
hmm
serious runner and she does use it as part of her training. So I
Yeah.
totally guess in my mind it was worth. See, here I am kind of rationalizing spending
No.
$300 for her vest. So
Yeah.
what are some of the risks? Any risks really in wearing it for certain people? Maybe somebody who has osteoporosis and
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
tell us.
Yeah, and I guess I should have mentioned this earlier. So weighted vests are not endorsed by the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation
Mm-mm.
because the
No,
research isn't certain. And they also point out on their website that there are some risks. If you have chronic neck, back, shoulder, or joint pain, or at risk of fracture, of spine fracture, you should not wear one. If you already have osteoporosis, it's generally not recommended. So if you have questions, you absolutely should talk to your doctor before starting to wear one. They're relatively safe for, a one or two
the
times,
majority of people, right, except for those
Yeah,
who you just mentioned.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation. I've been connected
I
to them for
know.
10
Yeah.
years and counting. But yes, everyone go, if you have questions about that, go on to their website. Also,
hmm
in addition to speaking to your healthcare
Yes.
provider about this, for sure. So if someone is determined to get a
Mhm.
weighted vest,
Yeah.
okay, just even hearing all of this, like I still
Yeah.
want that weighted vest. What are some of the things they should look for? Anything in particular? I know
Mm,
you don't want to mention specific brands or
sure.
models, but any factors that we should be looking
Yeah.
at?
And I just, as an umbrella statement, I believe all movement,
All
as long
movement
as
is good.
all movement is good. The last thing I would ever want to do is discourage somebody who has found a form of movement or a hack that they enjoy and that they feel good doing. So if you have purchased one and you've started wearing it and you love it, that's great. I just and I will answer your question. It's just, again, there can sometimes in the social media chamber, it can kind of create this idea that you have to own it. And if you're not wearing one, you're somehow going to suffer, or you're missing out. So that was largely.
Especially, and I do want to just kind of reference them again, especially when you have these highly regarded
Yeah.
with 1 million plus or even more, like 2 million plus followers,
Mm.
like the two medical
Mm-hmm.
influencers I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned who
Mm-hmm.
strongly
Mm-hmm.
recommend weighted
Mm-hmm.
vests.
Mm-hmm.
Then women can be confused about what to
Yeah,
do, for sure.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So as far as what to look for,
Yeah.
there is a huge price range. I know, again, my focus wasn't kind of like the consumer aspect of it, but there are vests that allow you to gradually add weight as you become stronger.
Right.
And one researcher I spoke with who I didn't end up including in the article, but is doing really interesting work looking at whether in some way the vest can help um, counteract the effects of weight loss related bone loss.
Hmm.
So far, she hasn't found any benefits. However, she was saying that with her study participants, she starts them in just really an unloaded vest, basically, just to get them used to wearing it,
Yep.
and then she will add weight little by little. So again, you want to start with ideally 5 to 10% of your body weight, or lighter if you really haven't been exercising at all. And then as it starts to be more comfortable and it feels lighter, you can increase the weight. And then if you get to a point where you're really able to, walk or do resistance exercises with a heavy vest, then you will start to see more fitness benefits.
Right. And I was just thinking too about, going to the gym and then doing like squats and lunges and things like that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
wearing a weighted vest. But at the same time, everyone think about this, if you didn't have a weighted vest, but instead you just picked up a few dumbbells,
Yeah.
barbells, right? Yeah. And you just did the same movement. You did the squat, you did the lunge, whatever it is,
Mm,
holding those. I mean, you're also then benefiting your upper
exactly.
body, which you're not really, as you pointed out. Clearly, it's a vest. Your arms go just kind of flailing around.
Right, right,
They're not really doing too much.
right.
And really think about that in maybe instead, or
Yeah.
even in addition to. But adding weight, I think in
Hmm.
general is a very good idea if and when you can do that.
Yes.
So, do you have one, Danielle? Did you get one? Do you have one?
No. I mean, I am so, even while digging into the science, I'm not immune from the draw of the weighted vest, or of this idea that there can be something that just requires very little sort of mindless, that you can just put on
Yeah.
and it will be benefiting you. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yep.
Um, but I really, the concept that, and I need to be doing more strength training. I do.
We all do. We
Yeah.
all do. We all do. And I think very often in my own head, I think I am, but I know I'm not. Like I think,
Yeah.
oh, I go to the gym, but it's just
Yeah.
it's not nearly enough
But
to
doing,
protect our bones.
yeah, exactly. And, even if it's 10 minutes a few times a week, I already have free weights at home. So I feel like if I'm going to dial things up, I could just be adding more of that to my routine.
That's right. That's right. And like I said, just pick up a weight and do a couple of squats in between your
Yeah.
appointments. Like after this, that's what I'm planning on doing. I mean, it really, at the end of the day, everyone and Danielle, it's not that hard to
Mm,
incorporate strength training in.
yeah.
We just have to do it. So,
Yeah.
okay. So time for bottom line, Danielle. So based on everything, is
Yeah.
this a go, no go? I mean, I think you kind of told us that already, but what's your final word on that for midlife women? Is this a yes or a no for weighted vests?
I'm going to repeat myself. It's a supplement, not a substitute. Or It can be a supplement if you've already purchased one, if you enjoy wearing it, and if you're not at risk for injury from wearing one. It can be a modest enhancement of your workouts, but it is not a substitute for a traditional well-rounded strength training regimen.
Right. So great. Danielle, it is always a pleasure to have you on. I love like seeing, okay, what's her column this week to see if, yeah, for sure have you back on. In fact, we were talking about this before we started recording, loved your column from a few weeks ago talking about Dr. Jan Todd and everyone. Hopefully you listened to the episode and you were mentioned many times, Danielle, by the way. Were your ears ringing when Bonnie,
A
Soy
little
and I
bit.
were talking?
Yeah,
Yes, it
thank
was the
you.
episode on muscle. Bonnie
Yeah,
Soy is the author of
yeah,
this incredible book. I just
yeah.
love it.
It's
I love
terrific.
everything about it. I love all the stories that she told and then her own personal
Hmm.
story that was really very, moving and an important part of the story over
Yes.
of the book overall. And so I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode, everyone, just in case you missed it. But the interesting thing is that Danielle had written a great column that was really highlighted by the New York Times because it was so good and so insightful about Dr. Jan Todd, who is a pioneer in physical, in weightlifting and strength
Hmm.
training. And, she really was an unsung hero, Danielle, right, for
Yeah.
so long. And that's why I really applaud you. Yay
Uh,
for, bringing her into the spotlight a bit. But at the same
Thank you.
time, Bonnie's book also has a full chapter about her. So I think that's remarkable. So great book,
Yes.
great episode. And yes, you were mentioned many times.
Thank you. Well, Jan Todd deserves all the mentions, and she's also in another book that came out this spring. So she's really getting her due finally, which is I love to
Which is
see.
wonderful. And I think
Yeah.
also because so many more people are focused on strength training.
Yeah.
So it all makes sense. So that's great. So
Hmm.
Danielle, of course, I know you will be back. You've been on the show many times talking about many,
Yes.
many different things. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
Talk to you soon, everyone.